Chapter I. The wisdom of the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is not a holy book as are the Vedas, the Bible, and the Quran. It is not a book at all, instead it is a secret traditional knowledge, the hidden thought of Israel, which, like gold embedded in rock, is to be found only after much labor in many Hebrew works, such as the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, Midrashim, Zohar, and scores of other books, the bewildering nature of which may be recognized in a few minutes by glancing through a Talmudic miscellany by Paul Isaac Hirschon. The word HLBQ, QBLH, is spelt in many ways, such as Qabalah, Qabalah, Qabala, and even, though quite incorrectly, Qabala. It is not derived from such fantastic origins as the name of Qabalah, the Indian philosopher, or from the name of the goddess Sib, for the word simply means reception, something received in oral transmission, an oracle, or the spoken word. And the reason is, as we have already mentioned, that for ages the Kabbalistic doctrines were not set down in writing or print, the Hebrews considering them too secret and sublime a wisdom for the common eye. This wisdom is formed within a vast number of doctrines, such as the nature of God, the mystical cosmogony of the universe, the destiny of the universe, the creation of man, the immutability of God, the moral government of the universe, the doctrine of good and evil, the nature of the soul, angels, and demons, the transcendental symbolism of numbers and letters, the balancing of complementary forces, etc., etc. All these many problems are divided under two main headings, the theoretical and the practical Kabbalah, the first being again divided into the symbolical, dogmatic, and speculative branches. The first main division, that is the theoretical, is philosophical, the second is magical and is largely elaborated round the Maseh Merkabah, the chariot of Ezekiel and the four animals which are also mentioned in the Apocalypse. Out of this magical Kabbalah much of the magic of the Middle Ages was developed. The speculative, or metaphysical, Kabbalah is the more important branch. It forms, as Adolf Frank says, the heart and life of Judaism. 1. It covers the evolution, involution, and devolution of the universe in every conceivable spiritual, moral, and intellectual form, and under such symbolism as, the spirit clothes itself to come down and unclothes itself to go up, and again in Ecclesiastes, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goeth downward to the earth. All these doctrines are wrapped up in the most complete secrecy. They form, in fact, the ancient sod, or mystery, of the Hebrews. Woe to the man who sees in the Torah, i.e. law, only simple recitals in ordinary words. Because, if in truth it only contained these, we would even today be able to compose a Torah much more worthy of admiration. The recitals of the Torah are the vestments of the Torah. Woe to him who takes this garment for the Torah itself. There are some foolish people who, seeing a man covered with a beautiful garment, carry their regard no further, and take the garment for the body, whilst there exists a still more precious thing, which is the soul. The wise, the servitors of the Supreme King, those who inhabit the heights of Sinai 3 are occupied only with the soul, which is the basis of all the rest, which is the Torah itself, and in the future time they will be prepared to contemplate the soul of that soul, i.e. the deity which breathes in the Torah. 4. This idea is again set forth in the Zohar in the following allegory. Unto a beautiful woman hidden in the interior of a palace who, when her friend and beloved passes by, opens for a moment a secret window, and is only seen by him, then again retires and disappears for a long time, so the doctrine shows herself only to the elect, but also not even to these always in the same manner. In the beginning, deeply veiled, she only beckons to the one passing, with her hand. It simply depends on himself if in his understanding he perceives this gentle hint. Later she approaches him somewhat nearer, and whispers to him a few words, but her countenance is still hidden in the thick veil, which his glances cannot penetrate. Still later she converses with him, her countenance covered with a thinner veil. After he has accustomed himself to her society, she finally shows herself to him face to face, and entrusts him with the innermost secrets of her heart. 5. It is, according to the book of Proverbs 6, the glory of God to conceal a thing, gloria Dei est celere verbum. With the lowly is wisdom. 7. That is, wisdom belongs to those who have conquered the arrogance of the rational faculty. Moses is looked upon as such a one. He kept the secret law secretly and orally transmitted it to the elect. 8. Also he compiled the public, or exoteric, law for the multitudes. These two categories of laws are distinct, but frequently the second envelopes the first, and, as pointed out in the introduction, the uncovering of mysteries before the uninitiated is wrought with infernal dangers, for to do so wantonly is to blaspheme against the mystery of God. As Eliphaz Levi writes, woe to those who lay bare the secret of divine generation to the impure gaze of the crowd. Keep the sanctuary shut, all ye who would spare your sleeping father. The mockery of the imitators of Ham. 9. The veil of Isis is not lifted with impunity, and curiosity blasphemes faith when divine things are concerned. Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed, says the great master. 10. The origins of the Kabbalah. The origins of the Kabbalah are primeval, they are lost in the mists of legend, magic, and folklore. They have grown through a process of mystical integration until they have absorbed all the great myths of the world. The Kabbalah is consequently a universal philosophy, combining the eternal masculine and the eternal feminine, and cementing them into the eternally human. So it happens that wherever we search we find origins. Thus in Essenism we find Kabbalism. The Essenes were not to divulge the secret doctrines to anyone. Carefully to preserve the books belonging to their sect and the names of the angels or the mysteries connected with the Tetragrammaton and the other names of God and the angels, comprised in the Theosophy as well as with the cosmogony which also played so important a part among the Jewish mystics and the Kabbalists. 11. But long before the Essenes existed lived the Kabbalah. Aryan and Chaldean esoteric doctrines percolated into it. In Egypt, the mysteries of the sun god, the moon goddess, of Osiris, and Isis, impinged upon it. Assyria and Babylon gave it much, and not a little may be traced to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Vedantas, and much of the practical Kabbalah to the Tantras more especially. Historically, the main point of interest is that the Kabbalist is an inveterate plagiarist. He never hesitates to absorb knowledge from outside. His doctrines, being secret, are vastly attractive. They suck in all mysteries and digest them into a universal form. Consequently, there is both grist and chaff in the Kabbalah, a medley of wisdom and nonsense which often defies separation. The outstanding advantage of this plagiarizing is that it offers something to everyone. Consequently, the Kabbalah has developed into a world-embracing philosophy well adapted to the ideals of a world-scattered race. In Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah, page 13, it will be found Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Theism, Deism, Dualism, Agnosticism, Pantheism, Satanism, Spiritualism, and Atheism. For every cult, except polytheism, has burnt offerings on the altar of the Kabbalistic mystery, magically depicted in the form of the pan-like Baphomet. It is this extraordinary universality which it is important to remember, for it has been the binding force which has kept Judaism intact. It has waterproofed it against solvent influences. Further still, the Kabbalah does offer to humanity a world religion or cult. In a silent and secret way, its doctrine is the conquering mystery of the life force. The philosophy of the Kabbalah is not difficult to define. It is a question of balance, of poise, and of equilibrium. But to explain what is meant by balance or poise is not so easy, and in place of attempting to do so in a few sentences, we will let this central principle evolve slowly on its own in this and the next 4 chapters. Esoterically, the object of this philosophy is a return of the universe into the structure of the first atom. This mystery we will attempt to explain later on. Exoterically, it is the return of Israel to the Garden of Eden, the megalomania of the all-conquering Jew. The relationship between these two objects is that the second constitutes the protective shell of the first. The second maintains the Jewish peoples intact, and this intactness enables Kabbalistic wisdom to evolve. Outside this protective duty, the second has no relationship to the first, no more than the shell of an egg, lifeless substance, has a relationship to the yolk within it, living substance. That the Israelites will find the promised land in the conquest of the world is a lie which protects a sublime truth, the reabsorption of the world into the pure spirit of God. To the masses of the Jewish peoples such a statement will be considered blasphemous. Yet in the Zohar we read, with his ordinary understanding, man cannot understand the revelation of mysteries. All that I am about to reveal to you can be revealed only to the masters, who know how to keep the balance because they have been initiated. 12. The shell, the white, and the yolk form the perfect egg. The shell protects the white and the yolk feeds upon the white, and when the white has vanished, the yolk, in the form of the fledged bird, breaks through the shell and presently soars into the air. Thus does the static become the dynamic, the material the spiritual. If the shell is the exoteric principle and the yolk the esoteric, what then is the white? The white is the food of the second, the accumulated wisdom of the world centering round the mystery of growth, which each single individual must absorb before he can break the shell. The transmutation of the white, by the yolk, into the fledgling is the secret of secrets of the entire Kabbalistic philosophy. Know that all the upper and the lower worlds are comprised in the image of God. We read in the Zohar point 13 here we have, 1. A unity, the image of God, 2. A duality, the upper and lower worlds, 3. A trinity, the upper and lower worlds and the image of God, and 4. A quadruplicity, the knower, the upper world, the lower world, and the image of God. Yet this quadruplicity is in itself a duality, the knower and the image of God, because this image includes the upper and lower worlds. The absorption of the knower in the image is the great work, the re-establishment of unity or equilibrium. Concerning the first of these two dualities, Isaac Meyer writes, basic element of most of the ancient, and to this day, of many of the modern religions of the world is, the idea of a perfect invisible universe above, which is the real and true paradigm or ideal model, of the visible universe below, the latter being the reflection, a simulacrum, or shadow, of the invisible perfect ideal above. This idea was fully understood by the ancient Egyptians, as was shown in their deities Nut or Neith, the upper world, Shu, or Ma, the intermediary, and Seb, the earth. Point 14 in India, the same idea is fully set forth in the esoteric books of the Vedas, called the Upanishads. It is the supreme ideal Brahm which is the only true. It manifests itself first in Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, past, present and future time, and through these in the visible, the last being Maya, or illusion. The temples of most of the archaic peoples of Asia and of Egypt were intended to be visible copies of the heavenly temple, the starry firmament called templum, and the same idea is visible in those of the Hebrews. Philo and Josephus represent the temples of the Israelites, as typical of the visible universe, and this was based on the invisible universe. 15. Amongst the Mohammedans we find the same idea, the first thing God created was a pen. Indeed the whole creation is but a transcript, and God when he made the world, did but write it out of that copy which he had of it in his divine understanding from all eternity. The lesser worlds, microcosmos, or men, are but transcripts of the greater, the macrocosmos, as children and books are the copies of themselves. 16. God takes upon himself spiritual form in the act of creation, which is pure light transfigured into visible light, which is the relationship between the eyes and pure light. Pure spirit can only be sensed as a relation which we call spirituality, the relationship between the third eye and pure spirit. God to this third eye is not nothing, he is all things, for when this eye is open he can be seen everywhere. The idea ex nihilo nihil phil 17, from nothing nothing is made, is abhorrent to the Kabbalah. Not anything, says the Zohar, is lost in the universe, not even the vapor which goes out of our mouths, as all things, it has its place and its destination, and the Holy One, blessed be it, makes it concur to its works, not anything falls into the void, not even the words and the voice of man, but all has its place and its destination. 18. The Kabbalist Abram Ben Dior writes, then they the Kabbalists affirm, that all things have been drawn from no thing not nothing, they do not wish to speak of nothing properly to say, for never can being come from non-being, but they understand, by non-being, that which one can conceive of, neither by its cause or its essence, it the no thing is, in a word, the cause of causes, it is it whom we call the primordial non-being, because it is anterior to the entire universe. 19. Though the Kabbalah recognizes but one primordial cause, it also recognizes two complementary elements, the one incorruptible and vital which reveals itself as a spiritual energy, and the other corruptible and inert, always tending to dissolve and return to its original atoms. The first is bliss, the second is hate, the first is symbolized by the angelic hosts, the second by the demon hordes, good and evil, for, as Isaiah says, I form the light, and create darkness, I make peace, and create evil, I the Lord do all these things. 20. The spirit which we sense through our third eye is not God as the primordial cause, or no thing, but as it were the thought of this cause. He constituted in the first place a point of light, which became the divine thought. 21. Our consciousness is the mirror which catches the rays of this thought, therefore all thoughts are images of God's thought, and the more spiritual, alive, our consciousness becomes, the more perfect are these images, which are not illusions but symbols of reality. Simon ben Yohai stretched out his hands and cried. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah, page 15. Now ponder well upon all that I have this day revealed unto you. And know that none of these celestial palaces are light, nor are they spirits, nor are they souls, nor are they any form that may be seized hold of by any of the senses. Know that the palaces are thoughts seen through curtains. Take away the thought, and the palace becomes nothing that the mind can grasp nor the imagination picture. And know, finally, that all the mysteries of the faith lie in this doctrine, that all that exists in the upper world is the light of thought, the infinite. Lift the curtain, and all matter appears immaterial. Lift another curtain, and the immaterial becomes even more spiritual and sublime. As each succeeding curtain is lifted, we are transported to ever higher planes of sublimity until the highest is reached. 22. The curtains are the divisions, abysses, between the superconscious thought of God and the conscious thought of man. The ultimate curtain is the shell of the egg, materiality, but before this final curtain can be lifted, a host of intellectual curtains, the white of the egg, have to be dissolved by transmutation into spiritual energy. Spiritual deliverance, or attainment, is consequently an act of creation. Finally we come to this conclusion, it is not God, or the universe, which is the supreme mystery, but man himself, the link between God and the universe. The Zohar says, as soon as man appeared, all was achieved, both in the upper and in the lower worlds. For all is contained in man. He combines within himself all the forms. 23. Again the Zohar says the essence of the supreme wisdom is composed of earth and of heaven, of divine and of human, of material and of immaterial, even as man is composed of body and soul. Man is the synthesis of all the holy names. In man are enclosed all the worlds, both the upper and the lower. Man includes all the mysteries, even those that existed before the creation of the world. Since the form of man comprises all that is in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, God has chosen it as his own form. Naught could exist before the formation of the human form which encloses all things. And all that exists is by the grace of the existence of the human form. But we must distinguish between the upper man and the lower man, since one cannot exist without the other. On the form of man depends the perfection of faith. That which we call heavenly man, or the first divine manifestation, is the absolute form of all that is, the source of all forms and ideas, supreme thought. Man is the central point around which all creation revolves. He is the noblest figure of all those that are harnessed to the chariot of God. 24. In nature, man is the center and the world is the periphery of what the Zohar calls the garment of God. 25. And the removal of this garment mysteriously does not disclose what lies behind it, but what lies within ourselves. It is not that we are absorbed by God, but that God is absorbed by us, the ocean of quicksilver merging into the minutest globule of this same metal. This unclothing is accomplished through equilibrium, not of opposite, but of complementary forces. Evil is not the opposite of good, but the negative side of a positive negative existence called life. When the positive equals, or balances, the negative, the result is equilibrium. Perfect equilibrium is zero, that is nothing, bliss. Equilibrium is the fundamental law, or mystery, of the Kabbalah. In fact the bulk of the Kabbalistic doctrines are but a commentary upon it. There is the upper and the lower, the real and the apparent, the invisible and the visible. In the Zohar we read, all that which is found or exists upon the earth has its spiritual counterpart also to be found on high, and there does not exist the smallest thing in the world which is not itself attached to something on high, and is not found in dependence upon it. When the inferior part is influenced, and that which is set over it in the superior world is equally influenced, all are perfectly united together. 26 Again and again is this idea repeated in different words, and from it is derived the Talmudic maxim, if thou wilt know the invisible, have an open eye for the visible, which means that this world is the true Bible which can lead us back to God or reality, for all which is contained in the lower world is also found in the upper and prototype. The lower and upper reciprocally act upon each other. 27 Or as is written in the Sefer Shephethel, all that which is on the earth is also found above in perfect prototype, and there is not anything so insignificant in the world that does not depend upon another above, in such a manner, that if the lower moves itself the higher corresponding to it moves towards it. As to the number, therefore, of the different species of creatures, which are enumerated below, the same number is to be found in the upper roots. 28 This doctrine of interdependence runs through the New Testament. Christ says, Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you, that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. 29 Also, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. 30 Who? Me, and what? Ma, are the two extremes of this doctrine, representing as they do the above and the below. In who created these is to be found the origin of the word Elohim, that is God, gods, for in Hebrew these is Ili, HLA, and by adding me, Im, we obtain Elohim, Mila, the me being reversed on account of its reflection. And upon this secret the world is built. 31 This same idea of equilibrium between who and what, upper and lower, is also found in the Hermetic doctrines, which drew largely on Kabbalistic knowledge. All is expressed in one proposition, that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above, for the fulfillment of the wonders of the one thing. According to Eliphaz Levi this universal principle is, the telisma of the world. 32 To symbolize this supreme truth, Hermes, so legend affirms, duplicated the serpent on his caduceus and so set it against itself in eternal equilibrium. See Plate I on page 18 and 19. In the visible world, man is the center, just as God is the center of the invisible world. God created man in his own image. Adam was made of the same earth out of which was raised the sanctuary of the earth. And the earth on which was the sanctuary was the synthesis of the 4 cardinal points of the world. These cardinal points were united at the moment of creation with the 4 elements fire, water, air, and earth. 33 These elements being Od, He, Va, and He of the name Jehovah. Man is consequently the synthesis of all the holy names. 34 Therefore in man are enclosed all the worlds, both the upper and the lower, and, since the form of man comprises all that is in the heavens above and on the earth beneath, God has chosen it as his own form. Naught could exist before the formation of the human form which encloses all things. And all that exists is by the grace of the existence of the human form. 35, see diagram 1 on page 20. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah page 17 plate 1, the Caduceus of Hermes. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah page 18 plate 1, the Winged Wand of Egypt. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah page 19 diagram 1, the Divine Man. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah page 20 As man is a duality in unity, so also is the Garden of Eden. There is the heavenly Eden to which there is no human approach, and the earthly Eden which is approached by 32 paths, the 22 letters and 10 numerals. No one knows the earthly Eden but the little face the 7 lower Sephiroth, and no one knows the heavenly Eden but the great face the 3 supernal Sephiroth. Should the upper Ikether cease looking into the lower Imakuth, the world would perish. 36 Thus does this unvarying idea of balance run on. The union of man with God, says Saint Teresa, is nothing but the reunion of 2 bodies which have been separated but are always one. The connecting link is the power of will, which is neither good nor evil, but a power or energy, which can be filtered through good or evil. It is, as it were, the beam of light of a magic lantern, the slides it penetrates being the nature of man. As long as these slides exist there can be no perfect vision of God and, consequently, no perfect union. When Moses said to God, I beseech thee, show me thy glory, the answer he received was, Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me, and live. And the Lord said, Behold, there is a place by me, and thou shalt stand upon a rock, and it shall come to pass, while my glory passeth by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by, and I will take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen. 37 Which means that man, if he wills, can see God's lower manifestation, his visible universe, but that his invisible nature is cut off from him whilst in the flesh. Since this fundamental law of equilibrium was first grasped, and it sinks back long before Kabbalistic days, nothing has been added to the essential knowledge of man, and the philosophy of the classical age, the magic of the medieval, and the science of the modern ages are founded upon it and have, in attempting to explain it, merely replaced one set of symbols by another. The Zohar says, the Holy One, blessed be he, found it necessary to create all these things in the world to ensure its permanence, so that there should be, as it were, a brain with many membranes encircling it. The whole world is constructed on this principle, upper and lower, from the first mystic point up to the furthest removed of all the stages. They are all coverings one to another, brain within brain and spirit within spirit, so that one is a shell to another. The primal point is the innermost light of a translucency, tenuity, and purity, passing comprehension. 38 Philosophical comparisons. Before concluding this chapter, it may be of some interest to the reader if a few brief comparisons are made between the Kabbalistic doctrines and other philosophies, because this will accentuate its universality, for the Kabbalah is a world philosophy, and consequently there lurks within it the makings of a world religion. That it should show remarkable resemblance to Zoroastrianism is to be expected, for both flourished in adjacent regions. As the Kabbalah is largely an exposition of the upper and lower, God and the image of God, so is the Zoroastrian philosophy founded on the idea of the passive and active in nature, the so-called good and the evil. As to the Kabbalist the mediating agent is the will, so to the Zoroastrian the great magical agent is in actual fact no other than Lucifer, the vehicle of light. To Pythagoras, God was absolute truth clothed in light, all things emerged from the tetrad, and the mediator was number manifested by form. To him material forms were but images or illusions of real forms, and this was the view also taken by Aristotle and Plato. To the second of these philosophers God, intending to make a visible world, first formed an intelligible one, that so having an incorporeal secret wisdom of the Kabbalah page 21 and most godlike pattern before him, he might make the corporeal world agreeable to it. Xenophon says, the supreme God holds himself invisible, and it is only in his works that we are capable of admiring him. 39 and Cicero says, though you see not the deity, yet by the contemplation of his works, you are led to acknowledge a God. Point 40 which is similar to St. Paul when, speaking of Christ, he said, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. 41 and again, for in him we live, and move, and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. 42 But of all philosophies the closest allied are those of the Vedanta and of Lao Tzu. The Indian system is a trinity in unity, the ineffable, incomprehensible Brahm becoming apparent in the Trimurti, Tri equals 3 and Murthy equals bodies, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, creation, preservation, and destruction. The Atman is reality, and the apparent world is Maya, or illusion. Man within him possesses an Atman, or soul, which can only attain to reality through absorption by the Atman or oversoul. This absorption is effected through meditation. Taoism is an idea even more closely related. Tao produced 1, 1 produced 2, 2 produced 3, and 3 produced all things. What, then, is Tao? There was a time when heaven and earth did not exist, but only an unlimited space in which reigned absolute immobility. All the visible things and all that which possesses existence were born in that space from a powerful principle, which existed by itself, and from itself developed itself, and which made the heavens revolve and preserved the universal life, a principle as to which philosophy declares we know not the name, and which, for that reason, it designates by the simple appellation Tao. Tao manifested itself in heaven and earth, with which it is, so to say, one. 43 Another writer says by the Chinese, man is considered as a microcosm, the universe is man on a large scale. Human reason is the reason of the universe. The holy man, or sage by eminence, is like the great pinnacle and spirit. He is the first of all beings. His spirit is one with the heavens, the masterwork of the supreme reason, being perfectly unique. 44 These resemblances, and scores of others could be cited, are not fortuitous, neither is it possible that they should have originated from one source, one human philosophical doctrine. The truth is that they are spontaneous, they spring naturally from reason itself. Once thought is turned upon the world, they are an integral part of man's mind and being. Destroy them, and we are plunged into madness, fertilize them, and step by step we are raised towards God. Religion, that is the equilibrium between the visible and the invisible, the lower and the upper, is essentially a part of man's nature. When this equilibrium is lost, society, however progressive it may seem materially, is plunged back into chaos from which cosmos and order can only emerge by an illumination, a balancing of forces, which will give life and light to a new world order. Man is the microcosm, because he cannot truly and meaningly say I am without postulating the macrocosm. The one is as much of his nature as the other, because his existence depends on the balance between both as certainly as an electrical current depends on what we call positive and negative waves of electricity or of light. Let there be light occultly represents the world, not only as a material form, but as a spiritual idea.